What's up, everyone? What's up? It is time to get starched. I'm just getting everything set up. It's 5 o'clock. If you are here and you're joining this party, why don't you go ahead and type in that chat so I know who we got here. We'll get started in just a minute or two, but let's see. So if you're here and joining us, why don't you go ahead and throw down in that chat. What's happening? So we're just going to get things a little bit adjusted here. Hope you guys are doing well. We're going to wait a minute or two. That way people can log on. That way people can find the link. Once again, go ahead and throw down your name in the chat so I know who's joining us today. Today we're going to be focused on our hip mobility. That's our hip rotation. We've already got a couple of people joining in. So once again, here we are. Here we are. This virus ain't shutting us down. We're going to crush it today. So we're going to wait probably 2 or 3 minutes, just the same rules as regular mobility class. And at the end of the day, I think you guys are going to be pretty pumped. We've got a fun class for you guys. We're going to really focus on our hip rotation. So once again, welcome to GetStarched Live. Yes, we've got K Rush and we've got Mother. There's our first. To anyone else, you don't need any equipment for today's workout. If you have a tennis ball or a yoga block, that would be very helpful. If you don't have a tennis ball, a baseball works too. And at the end of the day, if you don't have a yoga block, a book can work just as well. Looks like we got Jackal here. And we've got people hopping on, and that's awesome. So one more week. Other Jackal. We've got a couple other people. We're going to start in 2 minutes. I would recommend that you have some water. And I know my board up there is backwards, but it will still make sense here in a second. I know you guys, a lot of you haven't been able to make it in the gym or the Titan. I miss all you guys. I hope things are going well. And I think I'll bring a little bit of that starch magic to your week. So we're going to leave this stream up. If you happen to be watching this, not live, awesome. You're going to go through the workout the same way. What I want you guys to remember about mobility is this can be one of two things. This class can be really fun, or it can be frustrating. And I want it to be fun because at the end of the day, when we do stuff that's tough, when we do stuff that we're not good at, when we stretch and get into joints that are messy, locked up, and restricted, a lot of adults get frustrated. And I don't want that to be you today. Don't get frustrated. I want you to have fun. I want you to realize we're in a day and age where we can do this and make this work, and it's pretty awesome. I see Singer is there and Karina. Welcome, guys. I hope you guys are doing well. Looks like we got the 60-second rep and strong. So I want you to have fun, and I don't want you to get frustrated. At the same time, I want you to work hard today. So what that means is I want you guys to give me your greatest effort today. We have Riddler dropping in. Yes. This is awesome. So when we do mobility training, we're strength training. We're doing work. We're trying to change joints. We are trying to make stuff better. And we know in the gym to make stuff better, we have to work hard and we have to strength train. So joints are the same way. So today I need your greatest effort. You might have had a good day. You might have had a really bad day. You might have been encouraged today, or you might feel defeated. At the end of the day, we're going to go after it. So I want you to give me your greatest effort. But I also need your safest effort because a lot of these stretches and positions might be new to you or they might not be. So what I want you to do is I want you to make sure that you're still safe. So if you ever feel sketchy or a little overwhelmed in a stretch, I don't want you to force past your limits today. We don't just get it done in one day. Your hip and your spine and your shoulder and your wrist cannot be microwaved. 30 seconds, then it's done. We have to understand what we're doing today needs to be done over and over again for weeks, months, and I know I hate the word years to see progress. But I promise everything we do today will be worth it, and we're going to get started here in just a second. So I'm gonna kick things off. Welcome to everyone. I know we got people on here. I was excited. I had no clue who was gonna show up, but at the end of the day, I will always show up. So I'm here for you guys. Once again, safest and greatest effort today. I want you to have fun and not get frustrated. And then the final thing I need you to do is learn something. If all you do is get sweaty, tired, and sore, that's fun, but I need you to learn something because at the end of the day, I'm here to teach you guys and I want to teach you well. So let's go ahead. If you have some water, please grab it. But I want to kind of walk you over to my board today. And I know it's backwards, but I think this should be pretty simple. So can you guys hear me? Go ahead and throw a thumbs up if you can hear me. Hopefully my loud, booming voice is crystal clear. If you guys can hear me, give me a thumbs up in the chat, and we'll get started. I think we're good. We're good. Okay, so when it comes to joints, I want you to remember something about joints. Joints are a daily thing. When you wake up in the morning, hopefully you shower or you brush your teeth. And we know those are human things. And we know at the end of the day, joints are a daily thing. A lot of people think they're a Tuesday thing or joints are a Thursday thing. But at the end of the day, joints are a daily thing. So if you look on the board right here, I'm going to make this very simple. I have two circles up there, and I know it's backwards, but it's going to say now and later. So here's what happens. I want you to think that these circles represent your hip or how much mobility you have in your hip. So if we go to the top circle right here, what I want you to think is this is the range of motion of your hip. That's how much range of motion you have today. Here's the problem about society and what we do is we don't move our joints a lot. If you think about your day, a lot of people sit down for almost 12 hours of their day. They sit down at work. They sit down in their car. They sit down at home. We do a lot of sitting. So that means our joints don't go through much range of motion. So I want you to see, so I'm going to draw that in red on the top circle. So most people don't move that much. So here's what happens to their hip. Don't move that much. So here's what happens to their hip. Throughout their day, throughout their week, or throughout their month, they don't use much of the hip. So it looks like this. Notice how that red circle isn't very big. It's not very big at all. And that's not even half the range of motion of the hip. So here's what you got to understand. Most people use 50% or less of the range of motion in their joint. Now, I'm sure you've heard of a little rhyme called use it or lose it, which means stuff that we don't use, we kind of lose. Whether that's speaking Spanish in high school, whether that's singing, playing a musical instrument, or our joints. So what I want you to look at is the top circle. So if all I do on a daily basis, or in my workouts, or in my life, is move in that red circle, in that range of motion, what's going to happen 1 year, 5 years, 10 years later is this. That is going to be your new normal. And I know that red's a little hard to see, but if you look, that's your new normal. That's your new hip. That's your range of motion. So one of the biggest myths is that when you get older, that you lose range of motion. I hate to say that's not the truth, because it's only if we don't use it that we lose it. Now, here's the cool thing about what I'm going to teach you guys today. When you move your joints through a full range of motion, and we're going to start by doing what we call cars to do that, we're going to be able to keep and maintain that whole range of motion. So I want you to look at the bottom circle right now. This bottom circle is the same hip, but now I want to show you what happens when we take it through a full range of motion. So if I take my hip and every day I move it through a full range of motion, by the way, little bicep flex there. If I move that hip through the full range of motion and I go through and every day I use that hip to its fullest extent, here's the cool and exciting news, and this is what I want you guys to get excited about, is when I come back 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years later, guess what I get? I get to keep everything. I get to keep the same hip, and I'm going to be able to maintain that hip. So the most important thing you've got to remember is that if we don't use it, we lose it. And I know right now you're like, are we going to start stretching and working out? If you guys don't get this, we're in trouble. Because what happens is if we're the people up top and we don't move our joints through a full range of motion, you're going to wake up when you're 35, 40, 45, 50. I don't know when it is. And you're going to wake up and realize your hip, your ankle, your spine is now that. I'm telling you right now, when joints don't have much space, pain, problems, and plateaus show up. We're going to be these people down here. We're going to be unique and we're going to be awesome. And we're going to do what's called CARS. CARS stands for controlled articular rotations, or we're going to take one joint through a full range of motion. So if you guys are ready, so am I. And now we're going to learn how to do a hip CAR. The goal of CARS is to go slow. So when we go fast, we cheat. So I need you guys to go slow. And then what I want you to do is what I want you to think is we're going to be rotating during the whole circle. So if you can find some space on the floor, I'm going to pan the camera down and we're going to go to work. We're going to learn our hip CAR, or how we take our hip through a full range of motion so we can be these people in really living cool bodies. Before we get started, I want you to think about this. Every day for the rest of your life and for the rest of my life, you are going to wake up inside your body. That's crazy. So let's make a body worth living in. Hashtag GetStarched. Yep. All right. Let's go ahead and pan down. And what we're going to do is we're going to get into a side lying position. So what I want you to do is I want you to act like you're about to do a side plank, which means we're going to go with our right hip facing up, and I'm going to have my body spread out like I'm doing a side plank. So right hip is up, and I want your body in a flat, nice, strong line. And at the end of the day, you have a couple positions for your head. You can be all the way down and have your head on your bicep like a pillow. You can be propped up, or you can be on your elbow. It doesn't matter to me, whatever is the most comfortable position for you. We're going to focus on this right hip, and we're going to take it through a full range of motion and perform a hip car. So follow along, and I want you to not get frustrated as we go step by step through the hip car. So follow along, and we're going to start with the top hip, which is your right hip. Let's go ahead and spread out and get our head on our pillow, and we should be perfectly flat. First step of the hip car is we're going to actively pull our knee as high into our chest as possible. This is called hip flexion. So bring your knee into your chest, and then I want you to hold and squeeze. When I do this, my body should stay flat as a line, and I don't want you to round or scoop your low back. You should feel your hip flexor work, and I want to make sure that my toes are pulled towards my knee. Go ahead and kick this leg back straight. We're going to do that 4 more times, and that's the first step of hip cars. So pull your knee into your chest and actively pull the hip flexor tight. Back down nice and slow. Pull the knee into the chest. This is your first step. Squeeze the hip flexor. Try to get the knee as high into the chest as possible. You should feel a cramp in the hip flexor, and then kick back down. Pull the knee into the chest nice and slow. Make sure the toes are pulled up. No pointing of the toes. Pull the toes up and kick back down. All right, we're going to go to the second step. So that's step number 1. Step number 2 is going to be like a dog peeing on a fire hydrant. Sounds silly, but you'll remember it forever. So we're here. We've just pulled our knee into our chest. This is called hip flexion. Now we're going to abduct the hip, or we're going to bring the knee out and up to the ceiling. When I do this, I should feel a stretch in my groin, and I should feel my glute burning and singing, okay? Singing like Katy Perry right over here. Katy Perry roar. Stretch of the glute, okay? And then we're going to pull the knee back in to step number 1, and then we're going to kick down low. Let's repeat that 3 times. Pull the knee into the chest. Keep your body flat. Open the hip to the ceiling. Stretch the groin. Pull the knee back into the chest and back and down. Use effort as we pull the knee into the chest. Open up the hip to the ceiling. Squeeze the glute on the outside. Bring the knee back down and kick the legs back together. If your neck is starting to get tired, hand here, or you can go all the way down. Bring the knee into the chest. Open up to the ceiling. Squeeze the glute, knee into the chest, and then back and down. Now, so far, steps 1 and 2 should seem pretty easy. And for most people, they say, yeah, I got that. Step 3 is where it gets really tough. Because the hips, they're supposed to rotate. And like Shakira said, our hips don't lie. Well, maybe your hips do lie, especially Ditch. Ah, I see you on there, Ditch. So at the end of the day, our hips are a ball and socket joint, which means they're supposed to rotate. But a lot of people have been sitting down for so long that their hips kind of don't do that. So this next step is probably the hardest step. It's the one where I want you to go the slowest. So the next step is called internal rotation, where I try to rotate the foot out behind me. Watch carefully, and then you're going to go second. So as I get up and my hip comes here, we are going to act like I've got an imaginary stake, and I am staking my knee all the way through my hip into the ground. And the goal of this is we're now going to rotate the foot out and behind. So I stake the knee, and then we're going to start to internally rotate the foot as far behind us as we can. Rotate back, Bring the knee into the chest and then back and down. Knee into the chest. Open up the hip. Drive that stake through your knee. That's your point of rotation. So this is our axis of rotation. Rotate back, rotate back, rotate back, rotate back in. Bring the knee into the chest, all the way back down. One more. Bring the knee into the chest. Open up the hip. Use the glute. Stake your knee. That's your axis of rotation. Rotate the foot behind. Rotate the foot behind. Rotate the foot behind. Rotate back in. Rotate back in. Bring the knee into the chest. And then kick back and down. Now, I know what a lot of you are thinking. That sucks. That's not fun. I can't do that. When you're driving down the road and the road is closed, you have to take a detour. What that means is when our hip doesn't have good range of motion or it's restricted, you're going to have to take a detour. So when you got to step 3, a lot of people, the hip and the knee drop out of the sky. That's okay. What I want you to realize is when the road is closed, you have to take a detour. So I want you to try to hold off as long as possible and squeeze out as much rotation. Now we're going to work on the back half, and we're going to try to extend the hip. I'm sure many of you have done a basic quad stretch before, where we stretch the quad as far behind us as possible. The 4th step is pretty much like a quad stretch. So you're going to feel a lot of your glute and hamstring, and you're going to feel stretch of the quad. So join me at the beginning, and here we go. Arm down, bring the knee into the chest. Open up the hip. Grab your imaginary pole or stake. Now let's go ahead and rotate. Rotate as far back as possible. Once I get stuck, I want you to start to kick your foot behind you. And now I've got a big stretch of my quad, and I should feel a cramp in the hamstring. If I pivot, notice how my leg is in back. And now I bring my hips together. Let's go back to the beginning. So I want you to kick your leg straight. Let's bring your knee into your chest. Open up the hip. Grab your imaginary stake. Rotate back behind you. Once you get stuck, kick your knee and foot back behind into hip extension. And then bring your hips together. One more time, bring the knee into the chest. Open up the hip. Stake your knee. Internally rotate the foot behind you. Kick back and extend the hip, stretch the quad, and then bring your hips together. I know that's a lot to remember, but that's the halfway mark. So what we're going to do is we're now going to reverse that and go in the opposite direction. For a repetition, we want to go clockwise and counterclockwise. And what I'm trying to do is only move one joint at a time. So I want you to remember to go slow, and I want you to try to expand the circle as we go along. This is a lot for just moving the hip through a full range of motion, but I promise once you learn how to do your hip cars, it's an easy thing to do every single day, even when you wake up in the morning. So now we're going to go backwards. When we go backwards, the first step is hip extension. So when I'm going backwards, I'm going to kick my heel to my butt as hard as I can. What I want to do is I want to kick my foot and knee as far behind me as possible, and that's step number 1. You should feel the glute and hamstring on this hip. Bring your knees back together. Extend the hip. Stretch the quad. Back together. Extend the hip. Stretch the quad. 2 more. Make sure you're kicking your heel to your butt the whole effort. Extend the hip. Back in. 1 more. Extend the hip and stay here. Now we're going to bring the knee and ankle to the ceiling like a dog peeing on the fire hydrant. We're going to bring the hip up and back down. Extend. Abduct. Down. 2 more. Extend. Kick your heel to your butt. Abduct. You should feel the outer glute. Back down and in. extend, up. Now we're going to act like our world's favorite soccer player, Cristiano Ronaldo, and I'm going to externally rotate in. Bring the knee into the chest, and then back and down. All right, guys. So don't freak out right now. If this is something completely new, it's okay. No one's ever taken you through what it looks like to move your hip in a full range of motion. But now you know. So we're going to do work on the opposite side. So what I want you to do is, if you have water, make sure to take a sip. We're going to switch to the left hip. If you have any questions, just go ahead and type them in the chat. If you've got any dad jokes, please type them in the chat. At the end of the day, this is for you guys. So remember, we're going to go slow. We're going to move one hip. That would be the left one. And I want you to try to slow down when you feel yourself starting to skip or fast forward. Wherever you speed up, we're going to move one hip. That would be the left one. And I want you to try to slow down when you feel yourself starting to skip or fast forward. Wherever you speed up, let's go ahead. Let's lay out. Left hip up. Nice, flat, straight body. Let's go ahead and pull our knee into our chest with our toe up. We're going to open up and pee on the fire hydrant. I'm going to take my stake and plunge it through my knee. And now I'm going to rotate my foot back behind me. I'm going to extend the hip, stretch the quad, and then back and in. Let's go in and extend the hip. Pull the hip and the knee to the ceiling. Soccer kick forward. That's the bicycle kick. Bring your knee into your chest. And then back and down. Let's go a little bit slower as we pull the knee into the chest. Slow it down. Feel this movement. Squeeze your hip as you go around your circle. Open up, stake the knee, internally rotate, extend and kick back behind you. Bring your hips together, make sure you're kicking your heel to your butt. Extend the hip, stretch the quad, pull the glute to the ceiling. Win the World Cup, soccer kick. Bring the knee into the chest, and then back and down. We've got 3 more. It should be burning. It should be working. And at the end of the day, this is the Luke Air Force Base inaugural Kinstretch class. As we go here, we go out. We internally rotate. Slow it down. Don't rush through the areas of your body that are sticky, messy, crunchy, or tight. Slow it down. As we rotate, we pull the knee into the chest, and then we kick back and down. 2 more. Pull the knee into the chest. Open up the hip. Use the glute. Stake your knee. Rotate back. Pull the hip behind you. And then together. Kick your heel to your butt. Extend the hip. Up to the ceiling. Externally rotate. Knee into the chest. And then kick down. We've got 1 more, everyone. 1 more. Pull the knee into the chest. Don't rush it. Slowest and biggest circle yet. As we open up to the ceiling, juice out as much rotation out of the hip as we can. Extend and stretch the quad. Hips together. Extend the quad. Feel the glute and hamstring. Hip up to the ceiling. Soccer kick. Knee into the chest. And then back and down. Alrighty. What's the difference between starch and a calendar? A calendar has dates. Taylor Starch doesn't. At the end of the day, I was going to start off with a coronavirus joke, but it's kind of an inside joke. The funny thing is I can hear K-Rush laughing right now. That was a lot of work. You might have done hip cars before, or maybe that was the first time you've tried to take your hip through full range of motion. It's an everyday thing, guys. I hate to say it. That is something that we need to do because we want to be these people on the bottom who maintain their joints. And I promise you, every minute you spend doing cars is worth it, right? So what we're going to do now is we're going to get into a little bit more of a stretch flow. But at the end of the day, this is not yoga. So when you take a yoga class and you stretch, it is a little bit relaxing, right? So you'll see something like relax and breathe. Relax and breathe. that's not how we do it here, because at the end of the day, to change stuff, we have to work. We have to strength train in stretches, and we have to strength train our joints to cause a lasting change. So a lot of people are used to taking care of their joints by passively stretching or rubbing themselves with a piece of foam. They call that foam rolling. And at the end of the day, those are temporary things. So what that does is it makes you feel better, which is a good thing, but it doesn't last very long. So when you foam roll or passively stretch, you might feel a little bit less loose for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or 20 minutes, but we're going to do something different. We're going to actively strength train in stretches. That way we get to move better, we get that lasting change, and at the end of the day, there's no other way to do it. You have to progressively overload the body to change it. And that's the big difference between the way we stretch in these mobility classes and the way most people stretch. Is when most people stretch, they don't do anything. There's not gravity. Well, there's a little bit, but there's not enough gravity to overload the bones, joints, and muscles. So what happens is they slowly lose that function, or they lose muscle mass or bone density. Well, now what I want you to do is watch the way most people stretch. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. You didn't do anything. So at the end of the day, if we don't do anything in stretches, we don't get any long-term lasting results, especially that carry over to movements like squatting, jumping, deadlifting, and all of the above. So we're going to strength train. But what I need you guys to remember is there's always two sides to a joint. When it comes to a joint, if I was going to go into the side splits, this side of my body is the side that we're going to call the long side. So that's the side you're going to feel the stretch in. Now, when most people stretch, all they do is they simply feel a stretch in the long side, they hang out 30 seconds, and then they're done and going about the rest of their day. What we have to remember is a quarter has heads and tails, and that makes the quarter. So just like a quarter, there's kind of a heads and tails, or the long side and the short side. Most people, when they stretch, all they do is they feel a stretch in the lengthened tissue. But for the long side to get long, the short side has to get shorter. So what we're going to do is we're going to actively strength train on the long side and the short side. That way we get more range of motion that you get to keep long term. So let's go ahead and grab some space on a mat, and we're going to get into what's called a 90-90 position. Now, I want you to go ahead and get into a 90-90 position. The 90-90 stretch is all about hip rotation. That means we're going to have a 90-degree or right angle on the inside of this knee, and then we're going to have a 90-degree on the back hip. Now, you don't have to memorize this, but the front hip in a 90-90 is externally rotated. So if you struggle at what we do with the front hip, you struggle with external rotation. The back hip is internally rotated. So if you struggle with the back hip, you struggle with internal rotation. Now, I know a lot of you are like, how does that help me? It helps you because you now know what to tackle in your own mobility programs or when you go to stretch. So I want you to find where you're restricted the most and spend a lot of time throughout your week working those restrictions. So front hip, external, back hip, internal. We're going to start with the back hip today. And if you have something that is flat and soft, or I just want you to picture, this is going to act like a bathroom scale, and it's going to help us stretch. So here we go. I want your right hip forward and your back hip back. So right hip, external, left hip, internal. We're going to focus on this back guy first. This is going to act like a bathroom scale. It's going to go underneath my foot. If you don't have a slider, what I want you to do is just picture there's a bathroom scale underneath your foot. We're going to find the deepest, darkest stretch or the deepest, darkest corner of this hip capsule. The most restricted part of a bank is the vault. That's where all the good stuff is. Just like that, the deepest, darkest, most restricted part of your hip is called the capsule. So we're going to go to the deepest part of your hip, and that's going to be internal rotation. What I want you to see here is to find the stretch, we're going to try to rotate our chest and our hip towards this back leg. So what I want you to do is I want you to take your left hand on top of your left hip bone, and I want you to act like there is a big, ugly spider that is starting to crawl underneath your butt. I hate spiders. What we're going to do is we're going to try to squish this spider by taking and we're going to try to roll our pelvis back and down onto the spider. Let's practice that a couple times so you know the stretch. One more time. The spider crawls underneath your butt. I want you to take and I want you to roll your pelvis and hip back. And when you do that, your Superman logo should twist with you, and you're now going to find a deep stretch in this hip capsule or down in the middle of your hip. One last time. Roll and crush the spider. Notice how this front leg can lift up a little bit, and that's totally fine. Your hands can be in one of three positions. Your hands can be behind you, your hands can be on your shins, or you can do a combination of the both. It doesn't matter to me. A lot of people find this very uncomfortable, so you can lean back a little bit for the stretch as well. If you feel to peel back and squish the spider. To do that, we're going to sit and breathe, and I want my Superman logo turning towards my leg. I'm going to go left hand, left shin, right hand, right shin, and now I want you to sit and breathe. Breathe in and out. When I breathe, it shouldn't be from the shoulders, so I don't want to see you breathe like this. Breathe from down at your belly button. We're breathing, and we're trying to let out all that tension. We're breathing. Let out all the tension. Breathing. Let out all the tension. Now it's time to do work. So I want you to picture we have a bathroom scale underneath this back leg, and we're going to start to work. I want you to give me your safest and greatest effort today. So I'm going to give you a percentage, and that's how hard you're going to either push or pull into the stretch. If you get to a certain point and it feels sketchy, don't go beyond that. But I want you to work hard. What we're going to do is we're going to act like this bathroom scale weighs 0 pounds, and we're going to add pressure down to the ground by trying to kick this foot down. So let's go ahead and start to kick down at 5% intensity. I want you to think 100% would be the hardest you can kick this foot into the ground, and I want you to kick down onto that scale at 5%. That's not very much. When you do that, you should feel the stretch intensify in this hip. Let's go ahead and build that up to 10%. So we're going to slowly build our effort here, just like we're doing a heavy squat where we want to slowly warm up. If we do this quickly, we could risk injury, or we just might not be ready for that intense of a stretch. Now I want you to go ahead and press your foot down, kick this foot down in the ground at 15%. 20%, build your effort into the ground. 25, 30, 35, 40. Our first effort's going to be at 50. At 50% effort is about halfway of the hardest effort you can give. You're pushing down into the ground, pushing down. You should feel all this stuff contract and stretch. We're going to hang here for 10 seconds. Give me 50% into the ground for 10, 9, 8. Go ahead and work here. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Now it's time to pull in deeper. I know that's crazy, but at the end of the day, we've got to get in further into the hip. To do that, I want you to now try to lift this foot off the ground as you roll this pelvis down to crush the spider. So ready? Lift this foot. It will not lift. Roll the pelvis back. Lift the foot. Roll the pelvis back. Lift the foot. Roll the pelvis back. Lift. If you're cramping here, that's the right answer. Lift this foot. Lift. Lift. Roll back. And freeze and try to stay in the new stretch. Breathe. And exhale slow. Now, a lot of people do one of these two things. When they go to lift the foot, their pelvis goes the opposite way. Remember, we want our pelvis to roll down and back. So when you lift this foot, it's going to stay on the ground, but I don't want you to shoot the hip out and away. So make sure this hip is rolled back, and we're going to go in deeper now. So let's go to pushing down into the ground again, and let's ramp it up to 60%. 5% down. 10%. Work. 15, 20, 30. Press your knee and foot into the ground. 40, 50, 60. Hold 60% effort. Push into the ground. Push into the ground. Push in the ground. In 7, 6. Keep working. 5, 4, 3, 2. Try to lift this foot and try to roll this pelvis back. Lift this foot. Roll the pelvis. Kill the spider. Kill the spider. 5, 4, 3, 2. Stay in the new stretch. Don't leave it. We've got one more rep, and then we're going after the front hip. 10% down, 20% down, 30% down, 40, 50, 60, work hard, 70, 70% out of 100, work, 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 5, pushing down, 4, 3, 2, switch, pull in, lift the foot up, roll the pelvis back, low, exhale slow, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, slow. One more, inhale, exhale, slow. Now I know you guys are going to hate me. Let's go ahead and leave the stretch and feel that deep, dark hip capsule that's been restricting your range of motion. Now, if you need a break or your legs are going crazy, go ahead and give yourself a break. And then at the end of the day, we're going to hydrate, okay? That was internal rotation. If you felt that in the knee, if you couldn't get the pelvis to roll back and down and you couldn't squish the spider, you are restricted in internal rotation. And that's the most important thing the hip does. So if you struggle with internal rotation, what I want you to do is I want you to do that stretch on a more frequent basis than what you've been doing. We're going to go to the front hip now. And we're just getting started, right? So let's go to the front hip. Now, when it comes to the front hip, we still got the right hip forward. What I want to show you is the way most people go to stretch their front hip, which is for external rotation. When most people try to do the stretch we're going to do, what they do is they round and they touch their chest to their knee. If you notice, my back is rounded like an ice cream scoop. My chest is heading towards my knee. And this right here is not the best stretch for the hip. I'm going to get a little bit awkward, but at the end of the day, you guys need to know this. When it comes to stretching your hip, we can do two things with the pelvis. If I take my hips and I tilt them backwards, that's called a posterior tilt. So you can see my back is scooped like an ice cream scoop, or I call it grandpa on the dance floor. Looks like an old grandpa dancing on the dance floor. Now, I know you're laughing because that is funny as shit. But that's called a posterior tilt. That is great for when we do that internal rotation stretch where we're trying to roll and dump the pelvis back. But when we do external rotation, we want the opposite. This is what most people don't do with their external rotation stretches. So if we go in, our hips are a glass of water. If I spill water out the front side of my belly button and I stick my butt out and arch my back, this is called anterior tilt. So one more time, posterior, grandpa on the dance floor, and then we have anterior, where I stick my butt out and arch my back. We need to get into an anterior tilt where we stick our butt out and we arch our back to get the best stretch. So one more time, when we go forward in the stretch, do not round and scoop your low back like an ice cream scoop. It's tempting to go down, but I want you to think we need the hip set in the right position. So here we go. The right hip is forward, and now we're going to be stretching the right front hip. Right hip is our target, and now what I want you to do is I want you to get your spine as tall as possible. If you're out here to the side, your hips are probably really tight. So I want you to make sure that you've walked up and your chest is square center with your thigh. If I show you from the other direction, if I'm here and my low back is scooped and round, we want to make that tall spine and try to create ripples down our back. That is going to be the arch we need to stretch the glute and the hip. So here we go. Let's go ahead and get as tall as possible. And what I want you to think is the chest is going to head not for the knee, but to this target right here. Our goal for this stretch is we're going to go down as far as we can while maintaining a strong contraction out of the spine. The second you start to round and scoop the low back is where I want you to stop. So let's go ahead and bow forward until we get stuck. And here's our stretch. We're going to have a bathroom scale underneath this front foot right here. So the bathroom scale is now underneath the front foot. Let's go ahead and start to push this hip down into the ground. So I want you to start pushing this foot down into the ground at 5% effort. Let's go at 10% effort. 20%, 30, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now we're going to try to lift the foot as we pull our belly button to our knee. Try to kiss your belly button to your knee. Try to bring your chest out in front of your knee. Lift this foot and pull in deeper. Keep pulling in. If I shift to the side, we are pulling in deeper, pulling in deeper, pulling in deeper, and that's rep number 1. Double check to make sure you didn't round your back. If you caught yourself rounding your back, make your spine as tall as possible. Notice when my spine gets short, I round and scoop my low back. So spine is as tall as possible, and you should see ripples down your shirt. I want you guys to have as many angles as possible. So here we are. We're going into the stretch. Go ahead and start to push this foot down to the ground at 5%, 10%, 20, push this foot down, 30, 40, 50, 60, 6 out of 10, 10, 9, pushing the foot down, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, try to pull in deeper, try to lift this foot. Pull in deeper, maintain a flat back. Pull in deeper, keep going, don't round the back. Keep going, 3, 2, 1. We have our next effort at 70%. Make sure if you got small, you readjust and get your spine set again. That's the most important part of this stretch. Let's go and start putting our foot into the ground. Push down into the ground at 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%, 60, 70, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Lift this foot and pull in. Lift this foot and pull in. Lift this foot and pull in. Lift this foot, pull in, belly button to knee. And 3, 2, 1. Sit and breathe. Breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and out. Breathe in, out. Breathe in, out. And let's leave the stretch. So one of the things people struggle with is stretching deep enough. So one more time, the goal is not to get your chest as low as possible. It's to rotate the hip as much as you can. So don't worry about how low your chest gets. The most important thing about that front external rotation stretch is you don't round your back. If you hear me say it a million times, then you'll remember it forever. So please, please, please don't worry about going lower until you make sure your hip and low back are in the right position. If we don't stretch well, we're going to get poor to minimal results when it comes to stretching the really restricted stuff. So at the end of the day, we're going to flip and flop now with all of that. So here we go. Let's now go ahead and let's have our left hip forward and our right hip back, and let's go to that back hip. So take, and here's the spider crawling underneath. Let's go ahead and roll that pelvis back down and crush that spider. Notice how when I do that, my chest turns with me and that locks in that internal rotation. If when you go to roll back and crush the spider, your hip stops, you need more internal rotation. If when you go to roll back, all you feel is your knee, you need more internal rotation. If you're a human, you probably need some more IR. So here we go. We roll, we crush the spider. I can set my hands behind me, or I can set my hands on my shin. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about if this leg pops up. So we find our stretch, and we sit, and we breathe into the stretch. Breathe in and out. The reason why we don't go to work right away is I want you to picture it's like we call the construction crew. When you call a construction crew, they have to drive with their guys, their trucks, and their gals, with all their equipment, and they have to get on site. So when we start a new stretch, we have to wait a minute or two, preferably 2 minutes, before we start to work. I want you to picture that we started and called a construction crew to this hip, and it takes them 2 minutes to get there. So the reason why we wait to work is because we need construction crews on site with all their scale. We're kicking a foot into the ground. So I am actually kicking down into the ground at 5%. Kicking down into the ground at 10%. Kicking down to the ground at 30%. 40, 50, and hold there. 50%, halfway between your greatest effort. I want you to work. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, flip the script. Lift the foot, roll the pelvis. Notice how the pelvis goes down and back. Lift the foot, roll the pelvis. The foot will not lift. Lift the foot, roll the pelvis. Lift the foot, kill the spider. Kill that motherfucking spider! If it bleeds, we can kill it. And hold the new stretch. When we get deeper into the hip, your first instinct is to freak out, and leave the stretch. Don't leave the stretch. You just earned your way there, so stay in the stretch. Rep number 2, let's go ahead at 5%. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. Come on, let's work hard. We got to work hard to change the hip. 10, 9, work hard. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Lift the foot, roll the pelvis back. Lift and roll. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Final rep, 70%. Give me your best effort because I gave you my receding hairline today. Here we go. 10, 20, 30, 40. We have to strength train. 50, 60, 70. We have to work to change. We can't just sit here and expect results. 5, 4, pushing down at 70%. 3, 2, lift the foot, roll the pelvis back. Lift the foot, roll the pelvis. Lift. 5, 4, 3, 2, sit and breathe. 5 inhale, exhales before you leave. In, out. To the front hip. Now remember, this class is our intro class. There's not a ton of work, but there's enough work for today. So there's a big lesson today that you have to use your full range of motion of your hip, your ankle, your spine, and all that every day to maintain the joint. The second thing we're learning is that hips are supposed to rotate, and that's what we're working on. So we're going to do external rotation on the left hip, and that is what we're focused on today, is how do we start to improve hip rotation. So let's go to the front hip, that left hip, and remember, the first thing to do is to get a tall spine, to try to spill water. So remember, if my hips were a glass of water, I want you to spill water out your belly button and make your spine as tall as possible. Your hands can be on the ground as we fold and hinge over to find my first stretch. Don't worry about your chest getting lower. Make sure your pelvis is spilling and dumping water out the front side. The belly button is going towards the knee. The chest is heading down in front. Let's go ahead and push in at 5%. Kick the ground at 10%. So I am physically kicking at 20%, 30%, 40, and 50. Hold here. Work for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Try to lift this foot. Try to lift this foot and then contract down. Keep a tall spine. Don't get short. Tall spine and pull in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Rep number 2 to 60%. 10% kick. Push. Push your knee into the ground. Push your foot into the ground. 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. Hold here. Work. Work. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Pulling deeper. Belly button to knee. Chest in front of me. Keep tall. Keep tall. Pull in. Squeeze. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have one more rep. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Keep tall. 3. Arch the back. 2. Spill water. 1. Pull in. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Breathe in. Breathe in. Breathe in. 2 more. Breathe in. Last one. Breathe in. And that's all we're going to do today. I know that's simple, and I know that's not a lot, but what you learned today was 3 things. Number 1, why we need to take our joints through a full range of motion every day, and we're going to do that with CARs. CARs are our full range of motion joint articulations, and CAR stands for Controlled Articular Rotation, which means we go slow, we move one joint at a time, and we take it through its full range of motion so we can maintain the joint for our whole life. The second thing you learned is your hips are supposed to rotate. That's their number 1 job. So the 90-90 stretch is going to be internal and external rotation. The back leg is internal, the front leg is external. And the final thing you learned is that when we stretch, doing nothing will get us nothing. So we have to work. We have to strength train. There's no other way around it. If you haven't gotten the results you've wanted stretching, it's probably because you didn't. So we need to strength train on the long side and the short side because a quarter has heads and tails to make a quarter. And when we strength train in a stretch, you will get to keep the range of motion. You're going to get rid of pain, you're going to get rid of problems, and you're going to get rid of plateaus. And at the end of the day, that is how we start to make a hip rotate. I want you guys, if you would like, to continue to do a couple more hip CARs to end this session. But at the end of the day, my YouTube is saying that I need to end the stream. For some reason, I must not be that cool. But at the end of the day, I hope you had fun and you didn't get frustrated. Number 2, I hope you gave me your safest effort, but you also gave me a great effort. Number 3, I hope you learned something. So notice how this class wasn't just get destroyed, but you should learn now. You should be really a lot better than when you started this YouTube Live. And I hope that you share this with your friends, family, or anyone who's a human, because most people have hips. And unlike Shakira, they are lying. Shakira's hips don't lie, and neither do mine, but hopefully yours won't at one point in your life. So one more time, I need you to do your CARs every day, every damn day. It is important, guys. No one would say they were comfortable maintaining 30% of their hip, spine, ankle, or the above. So I need you to do your hip CARs every day, and other mobility classes will be covering everything from the elbow to the spine to the shoulders. And thank you guys so much for joining. This is the first time we've tried this. I hope it went well. And at the end of the day, I care so much about you guys. I'm there with you in this hard time. And at the end of the day, that's how we get starched. Later, Gators.